Welcome to the first guide created for the Snail Racing Race to Learn program. In this video we will be focusing on car control and use the Mazda MX-5 at the Okayama short circuit. I'm Larry from Snail Racing and I'm joined by Charles Kellyman and Andy Maxwell to answer some of the most basic questions I had as a rookie. So in the first part of the video I'll be driving around the track by myself and Charles will just observe what I do and I'll share with him my mistakes. I'll share with him the questions I've got and then he can talk me through it in the following part. Etc. But I'm going to go for a lap now and then explain to Charles where I struggle. So Charles, typically on lap 1, I usually struggle with this turn specifically a lot because I would understeer.
Okay.
So I generally go off track like that.
Okay.
So that I find that one of the most difficult turns for me. Yep. In this section of the track, I tend to be slipping all over the place, and as I exit this corner, I often oversteer and spin out.
Okay.
So I've got a real problem with that turn there. And then in this part of the track, when I don't know what speed I should enter this in because it feels extremely slow. Extremely slow.
Yeah.
And on the exit on this one, often when I go full power, I would spin out as well. And I don't know if that's got to do with the elevation change in the track, that I lose grip on the rear. So I'll try and go a little bit quicker and then you can try and see what I do wrong, maybe give me a bit of advice and see how we get on. In the next section, Charles takes me through improvements that I can make in the lap and while I'm driving, and he explains to me the reasoning behind it. The point I take away from the first part is that learning the track and the racing line is by far one of the most important things that we need to learn as drivers on new tracks. Let's go have a look at Charles's feedback.
Okay, so your braking point into turn 1 looks okay. I'm in your cockpit, so I can't actually see your brake lights or any pedal inputs. I would try and get tighter into turn 1, get tighter onto the curb. Third gear, get tighter, keep tight, keep tight, keep tight.
That's a lot slower.
Yeah, you can then pick up speed. Once you get one of the important things is getting the line right.
Okay.
So I think maybe for, first few laps, work on getting your line right at the slower speed.
A future video will be dedicated to racing lines and where we will look at corner entry, corner exit and decision making on how to take a corner. One of the issues that Charles identified early on was that I wasn't very gentle or smooth with my inputs, especially the throttle input. He explained to me how it would induce understeer in mid-corner. Let's go have a look at how that happened.
And easy on the throttle, don't push the throttle. You don't want to push the throttle when your steering is turned too much.
Why is that?
You want to so if you have your steering at say 90 degrees or more to the one direction or the other and you're in a high gear, if you just push your foot to the floor, the car will have a tendency to just keep going straight, so you lose all grip. Okay, so just smooth inputs on the steering and your throttle and push when you're straight. Brake in a straight line as much as you can. And I've noticed through here on your previous laps you're on off off on the throttle quite a lot.
Yeah.
You want to be gently pushing it in and gently easing off as well.
While Charles was driving, I sat in his cockpit to see how he did it, and I noticed exactly how smooth and how precise his inputs were. And in this little section coming up, you can see how little steering inputs he actually uses compared to myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you see here, I'm only turning a quarter of the turn to get it around there.
Yeah. And that's fascinating because it's such a sharp turn. You'd think you need to turn
Exactly, but you're using your brakes to turn. Your brakes are not only to stop the car, it's also you can use your brakes to actually turn the car as well. Again, I just touched the brakes slightly there to get the tail around a bit.
Now we will talk about trail braking, a concept I didn't really understand when I started sim racing. It was quite foreign to me. One of my early tracks that I raced was on Summit Point, and I really struggled in turn 1. I couldn't get the car turned in, I couldn't get good speed around the corner, and after many laps I figured out if I stayed a little bit on the brake that the car would turn in better and I would go a lot quicker around it. And that was one of the tracks that's now one of my favorite tracks because I've learned that and discovered that myself. In the next session, Charles talks about trail braking and how to do that.
Okay, when we get round onto turn 1 again, remember just to keep your same braking point. Go a little bit quicker this time. Keep the same braking point.
Okay.
Keep tight onto the right-hand curb and ease off gently off your brake as you're going into the turn.
Okay.
Very gently, and also steering gently as well.
Something like that?
Yeah.
So what does that do?
So basically, that's called trail braking. Now, I'm no expert, but it's something that I've picked up over the period of time during my sim racing.
Okay.
You might have heard the term slowing fast out, trail braking. So what trail braking will do is help put the weight onto the front tires and help your front tires grip a lot more.
Okay.
But it's you can't just come straight off the brake into a turn, otherwise you will just lose traction, and depending on how the car's set up, you'll induce oversteer.
Oh, I've missed that completely.
Yeah.
See that's a great example. I braked at my normal braking point, but the car, I couldn't get the car to turn in early enough. Is that because I didn't brake hard enough?
So your initial brake is quite hard because you're at that straight is you're coming up a long straight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so your initial brake will be really hard. I'm not quite sure the percentage is maybe 80 or more percent, depending on your setup. And then you gently bleed off the brakes as you're turning in, and that will help, like I say, grip up and keep control of the car on the speed.
After quite a few laps, we finally got to the point where we discussed oversteer and understeer. When the car is obnoxious, wouldn't respond to your inputs, and often I don't know how to control the car in those circumstances. So I've specifically asked Charles for some advice on how he deals with it and what I can do to improve that. One of my biggest problems is when the car is a bit, when I do lose the rear of the car, I struggle to catch it. Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any tips you can give me on how to deal with that? Is it just something I have to practice? Is it reflexes?
It is. It's all of the above. So it's reflexes. It's understanding what you're feeling through the wheel and what you're seeing visually, and knowing how to react to that. What a lot of people will do is make sudden movements in order to correct oversteer or understeer, including smashing on the brake or the throttle, and that just moves the car around even more. So it's really understanding what the car's doing and how to respond to that. Setup's very, very important as well. You're probably using baseline here, which is usually a good place to start.
So so that's what happens when I go full throttle.
So you had you had your steering 90 degrees full throttle, and the car kept on going straight.
Going straight, exactly. And so
Yeah.
one way I would deal with that is to lift.
Yeah.
So in this case, I'm even touching the brake a little bit.
Exactly. So what the brake will do is help get that car back into control.
Okay. Because it moves the weight forward onto the front wheels.
Exactly, onto the front wheels. Yeah.
Gives you a bit more grip. Okay.
More grip.
So understeer I can deal with reasonably okay. I think that's why I think real cars are set up with understeer, because they're easier to control. It's oversteer. Right. So for example, if I go full throttle now, you just lose the rear completely.
Yeah.
As you said there.
Yeah.
And I can't. I don't know if it's the Mazda, if it's me, is it set up, or is that once it's gone too far, it's impossible to catch?
Yeah, so setup's important. You know, like I say, baseline's a good starting point until you start getting relatively similar times on each lap in your sector times, and then you can start playing with the setups. Getting it wrong, however, it can cause you quite a lot of problems if you're not entirely sure what you're doing. So changing the ride height, the toe, the camber will all have different effects on the car, which will, you know, kind of, you think it's helping, and in actual fact it's actually making it worse. And this is why I always say for new drivers, just stick with baseline for now until you get a bit more experience. Also, like I've said before, the line is really important, because if you get your line right, you can get on throttle a lot earlier.
When I started sim racing, I really struggled with gear selection. I often had to go watch videos to see what gears people use to go through turns. In the next bit, we talk a little bit about how the gear selection affects the car, the stability of the car, and how you take a turn.
Another thing going around that double right-hander complex, looks like you're going into second a little bit too early.
Okay.
Because you going from changing down a gear will also induce an engine brake.
Yes.
You can actually use that to your advantage when you turn in the car as well.
Yes. At this point, I jumped into Charles' car to see how he does it.
Cut that out.
No.
Edit that bit. Edit that bit out.
That's how this video starts.
Oh dear me.
That's exactly what we need to learn. Car control, man. Yeah, you're way better on Apex than me. Okay. You're going to third, and that's why you don't. Okay.
Sometimes I will do that complex in third. We'll try in third next lap.
Yeah, we'll charge it.
And that's another thing when you're learning as well. Particularly, I know you're not exactly learning yourself, Lawrence, but for new people and new drivers, you experiment with different gear choices, because sometimes too high a gear will spin your wheels. So that time I've done that in third. Wheels are scrubbing a lot less, but I didn't feel as quick.
And that's the thing, it doesn't feel quick. That's just experience, right? So you will know when it's quicker or not, or do you still, with all your experience in the rig, only realize it was quicker at the end of the lap when you see the time?
Yeah, so you can have a look at your delta. You can actually have it on sector times.
Yeah.
So you can compare your previous sector with your current sector, and see whether the choices that you're making has actually improved your lap time.
We asked Andy to take the turn in second gear so we could compare it to his other laps when he took it in third, so we could see what the difference in the behavior of the car was. slow for him.
Yeah. And he's playing with the throttle as well.
Yeah.
So he didn't get back on throttle till very much later.
Yeah.
Because if he got on any earlier, he probably would have spun.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks.
It's a great example actually because it's a great example of gear choice and what it does to the car and the position of the car in the turn.
Yeah.
He's probably figured out how to make it work now.
Yeah. And again, it's lap after lap, feeling what the car's doing, you can react. You start to learn how to react to what the car's doing. Because in the race, you probably do have to go into second.
Yeah, it took a wider line, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Which meant, and then he short shifted into third as well.
Yeah.
So he took a wider line so he could get straightened up earlier to get back on throttle earlier.
Yeah.
But he's making those choices. It's almost like a snap decision.
That's instinct, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the experience gives you. Charles attempted to talk us through his lap like Jenny Broadbent does. Unfortunately, he's the same as me. Driving and talking doesn't always work well together.
Okay, so I'm going to trail brake into this turn. Now I'm off brake, on throttle. Dab the brake there to get the car turned. As you see, I'm using as much track as I can, hitting those rumble strips. Braking quite hard into second, onto the strip here. You'll see my steering wheel dancing around a little bit when I'm going a little bit quicker because I'm feeling that feel through the wheel of understeer and then oversteer, then I'm wrong here, and then I'm kind of reacting to that.
Did you just break the car?
Almost. I went into second gear by mistake. That's talking. I can't do a Jimmy Broadbent. I can't commentate.
That guy's insane, man. Right, so that's the session done. I've learned loads. Hopefully it was useful to you guys, and hopefully you can take one or two things away from it. I'm going to try and keep these videos really short and concise to get the points across so it's consumable, and then you can go take it out on track and practice. Hope to see you in the next video. There should be about 6 or 7 of these videos, and keep an eye out on the channel. We'll post them as soon as they're ready. Happy racing.